Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Blackwater's Edge podcast. My name is Eddie Bramble. This is Kaz Kenny, and we have Gary Smith as well. Today we're still going to talk more about the northern snakeheads. That's the hot topic right now. That's what everybody wants
us to do. So
we're going to stick with that right now. We're going to go over a couple things. We're going to go through our 5 questions again, just like last week. The main thing we want to talk about today is transitioning from warmer weather into colder weather here, fishing for snakeheads in Blackwater.
It's changing quick.
It's changing very quickly, very quickly. So one of the main points we want to get across to everybody today, make sure you are prepared for these colder temperatures.
Oh, yeah.
So main thing is make sure you have you're dressed appropriately, you have the appropriate gear for handling wet, cold temperatures.
Yeah.
What are some tips you can give for that?
I mean, the biggest thing for me in the wintertime is always make sure I've got a change of clothes with me, an extra set of clothes. You know, the last thing I want to happen to me is I'm out there by myself and I'm alone and I've fallen in the water. You know, I'm not prepared for that. I mean, if you're in a kayak, you know, I mean, you want to make sure you definitely dress appropriately. You know, you got
Absolutely,
some kind of a wetsuit, you know, or something like that to keep you safe if you go over. I always keep hand warmers, you know. I always keep hand warmers in my pocket. I mean, there's lots of things you can do. You just have to prepare, and safety is like the biggest thing I think that's most important this time of the year. Is, you know, I know we all want to catch a snakehead, but
right.
it's most important that we protect ourselves and keep ourselves safe and our friends safe and our visitors safe and that kind of thing. What can you think of, Gary?
I'd just say if you're in a boat, kayak, whatever, if you got hip boots on or waders,
that's a good
be
point.
Careful, because if you fall in the water, they're going to fill up.
They're going to weigh you down.
And I see them on Facebook all the time. The little ads on there. They have it's a little package about maybe 4 or 6 inches square and a half inch thick. It's a survival blanket, and basically a little thing that you can zip up.
Yeah.
And what you can do with it is, if you get cold and even if you don't have a change of clothes, you can strip down, get inside that bag, and throw a half a dozen hand warmers in there. So it doesn't hurt to have them. I've got a box with probably 50 hand warmers. I don't use them too much for my hands, but I use them for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely keep them in my boots.
It's a good thing to have in your tackle box. They don't take up much room and could save your life.
I had a guy the other day ask me about gloves. You know, like what kind of gloves did I recommend? You know, if I'm out there and I'm fishing, what's the most comfortable, the easiest to access my fingertips so that I can get the fish off the line, access my gear, my pliers, whatever I need for the fish. So, you know, one of the things I like to use is the without naming brands, a pair of neoprene gloves with some removable fingers, you know, that you can fold them back and you can get to what you got to get to. You know, good thing about neoprene is that, you know, it'll keep the body heat inside the glove.
It's a great insulator.
One
really
another thing is just have a hand towel.
Yeah.
So your hands aren't
big
wet.
difference.
Yeah,
Just a towel. Absolutely.
When you're wet and cold, or when it's cold and you're wet, you're cold.
It's miserable.
There's lots of little things that we can do just to make the situation a little easier. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So don't be afraid to, you know, throw 5 or 6 hand warmers in your pocket because there's a good chance you might need them. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So, a lot of new guys here fishing. A lot of big questions I always get here at the store. Where's the best place to launch your vessel?
It's only 2 that I know of.
Inside the refuge.
Right.
Inside the refuge.
One's 335, and the other one's a soft launch over by on Egypt.
And we've got Shorter's Wharf.
Right, and then
we've
you've got a couple
Raccoon Creek down there.
The ones
too.
outside of the refuge.
Yeah, we've got Raccoon Creek down there, and I'm not sure, but I think that some of those connect into the refuge. You know, so just make sure you're watching the balls on that.
And then you've got Newbridge and Drawbridge as well.
Newbridge, Drawbridge, they both have public ramps. I mean,
I was just talking. You said Blackwater.
Right, inside the refuge. Yeah, you're right inside the refuge. Yep.
I mean, one of the things you got to realize in Blackwater, and you were talking about it earlier, we can't do what? We can't launch with what?
You can launch with a trailer.
Yeah, you can't launch with a
If you got a trailer, you can't use it.
You can
trailer your boat, but you can't back a trailer down to the water.
The soft launches inside of the refuge basically are for kayaks or for powered boats that you can carry. That's all they're good for. You cannot use your trailer when launching your vessel inside the refuge. Yeah. They have, I think they have concrete barriers up anyway, don't they?
Most of them do. Yeah. I mean, you just can't get a trailer
effectively
in and out.
It's just
you know
not
what I mean?
possible.
You're going to rip your trailer up trying to do it.
And I'll say one thing that probably most people and guides probably don't know. You are not allowed to guide.
That's right.
From federal property. So you can, if you're taking it, like for me, if I take someone out fishing, if I don't have private access to the water,
you can't
I cannot take them to Blackwater soft launch or 335 and put the boats over there. If I do, I'm in trouble if I get caught.
Absolutely.
It's against the law.
I mean, another one is Egypt Road. We got that soft launch
yeah.
over there.
Yep.
You know, let's not forget about that one. That's a pretty hot spot and a pretty good area to fish.
That's a great spot to fish.
Great
yeah.
place to fish.
So what's transitioning? What are the best kind of vessels to use here fishing for snakeheads in the refuge and outside of the refuge, just in this area?
Mainly, I mean, most people I think use kayaks because they're very shallow. You can sit in them.
Seems to be the most popular option.
They're
is
fairly
kayak.
stable. Some of them you can even stand up on. And small john boats.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this. I did have a couple people this year that were using paddle boards
Really?
to catch some snakeheads.
I didn't-
Over
I didn't know
335,
that.
yeah, just
How about that?
out there with big paddle boards, you know, and just
same
taking
thing,
one
shallow.
rod with them, keeping the little tackle bag between their feet. It was pretty cool to see,
reason why it
actually. You
wouldn't
know
work,
what I
yeah.
mean? Yeah, yeah.
And most people that use john boats either have electric trolling motor, or some of the big ones have these little small mud motors on them.
Beaver tails,
Outboard
yeah.
motors are not real good in Blackwater
No,
River. It's
they-
just it's stumpy.
It's so many stumps. It's so shallow. You never know what's exactly in the water. I mean, especially with the water being so dark, you can't really see anything.
Yeah,
So.
be careful.
For
your
me, for
outboard,
years
though.
and years, that's all I ever used was a john boat, you know. And then in the last couple years, you know, I've got myself a little canoe and I've got myself a little kayak, and I've gotten outside the box with a little pond tender, you know, and adjusted accordingly. What people need to know about, if you are going to use a trailer launch in the refuge, you have to be able to launch that by hand. So
Right.
if you, like for me, you know, people always say, well, I can't bring my john boat down there. Yeah, you can bring your john boat down here, but if you can't pick it up and put it in the water by yourself and put it back on the trailer by yourself, it's probably not a good idea for you to come by yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Now, while we're on the subject of that, we have to make sure that people understand when we say pick your john boat up and launch it, we're not saying anywhere in the refuge. It has to be from the ramp still.
Yeah, it has to be from a
because-
soft launch or something like that. You just can't stop on the side of the road and throw your boat over the
Right,
side. You know what I'm
exactly.
saying? You
I
can't
don't-
do that.
I don't put over there, but at 335, and there's some kind of little gate or something you actually have to go above
Yes.
it to get. You can't
Yes.
go under it or around
Yes.
it.
Right.
You have to
Yes.
go above it, so you actually have to be able to pick the boat up. You can't slide it.
Right. It's like a T gate is what it is, you know, and you have to swing the gate sideways and you can get your stuff in there. So yeah, I mean, you can't just back your trailer in anywhere. If you're going to try to use a john boat or something like that, make sure you got a friend, somebody can help you, you know, get it in, get it out safe, and make sure wherever you're getting in and getting out, make sure that your tide is right, that you're not going to have a low tide, you're going to be stuck in mud, you can't get out when you come in because you're trying to deal with 3 feet of mud to walk through. That's another
That's bad
thing you
news.
want to do
That's
down here,
definitely bad news,
especially if it's cold like this. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, one of the main questions we've been getting asked all week long since we've put up the hashtag. If you want your questions asked, hashtag Ask Blackwater's Edge,
Yes.
and we'll
Got
get
a good response this week.
great response. So we're trying to get to as many questions as possible. One of the most asked was, how late in the year does fishing in Blackwater last for snakeheads?
For me, it's until secondary comes in.
For me, it's all year. It never
I
ends
mean,
for me.
because you fish a lot in the winter. I
Yeah.
don't fish a lot in the winter. I hunt. So
So, I mean, like for me, as we transition from the cold or from the warm weather to the cold weather, we want to start thinking about a lot of things. You know, fish are going to slow down their metabolism, so they're not going to crash a bait. So we want to start looking at baits that we can effectively use, keep in the strike zone, not too heavy. You know, a lot of guys look at a lot of the stuff that I'm using in the wintertime, and if you pay attention to my stuff, and I'm going to go ahead and let another one of my big secrets out. So a lot of these guys that you see me talking about, I reach out to these fellas and I ask them to custom make me a smaller head on the chatterbait, a smaller head on the spinnerbait, a smaller weight on the spinner. You know, for me this time of the year, it's all about being able to have an effective presentation, as natural as can be, at the speed that everything else is working
Right.
at. You know, if I'm running a bait through an area 3 times the speed of any kind of natural forage that's in the area, first of all, the fish knows it. Something ain't right. You know what I'm saying? So they're not going to be attracted to that.
Right.
So what I try to do this time of the year, for instance, with chatterbaits, I ask these guys to make me 1/8 ounce chatterbaits so that I can slow it down, so that I can stay in that zone. These fish will feed all year. The fact that the whole we bury in the mud, we hibernate for 3 months, you know, all that stuff, that's kind of like just really far-fetched. At least from what I see here, I don't see it here. You know, I catch these fish 12 months of the year. I probably catch more bigger fish during the colder months of the year than the warmer months of the year, which that's not really true with a lot of fish, you know, that we target, you know, period. So I tell people, you know, you want to slow your baits down. Another thing too, you got to think about this. We're not dealing with fry anymore this
Right.
time of the year.
Fry, they're
okay,
gone.
we're
They've
dealing
grown
with
up.
bigger forage. So for me, I'm looking for maybe not necessarily the smallest lure in the world, not necessarily the most biggest lure in the world. I'm looking for the lure that is most representable to the fish or the forage that's in that area. If they're eating 4-inch shad, I'm throwing 4-inch baits. If they're eating 6-inch mud shad, I'm throwing 6-inch baits. If they're corralling 12 to 14-inch mud shad and ripping them to pieces, I'm throwing a big musky spinner, downsized, lightweight, big blade. I tell guys, a big blade now this time of the year. Your fish that are flashing ain't this big anymore. They're starting to get bigger and bigger. By the time we get into January, that fish is 4 to 5 inches, 6 inches long, especially shad-wise anyway, So adjust accordingly, slow down, match the hatch. You know what I'm saying? If you've got white perch more prevalent in the area, stay with more whites. Yellow perch are starting to move in. So I'm starting to use more browns and oranges and yellows and things like that. You know what I mean? So, just try to think about the situation that you're in. Think about what you're seeing on the water. And if you see the fish feeding aggressively, speed it up a little bit. If you don't see them feeding at all, slow it down a little bit.
I think a lot of that depends on how warm it is for because you'll have days where you get 3 or 4 days in a row where it gets warm. And you can use those heavier, faster baits again. What are your favorite baits to use when it's colder though?
I haven't really snakeheaded a lot, but like they're very similar to bass or pickerel or anything else. And I would always wait. Usually the first week in January, first week in February, there's always 2 or 3 days that the temperature gets up around 60 degrees. We used to slam the bass and the crappie, and I would imagine Kaz probably tell you snakes aren't any different.
No different at all.
The water, all the water that we're talking about from the Corsa Bridge, Blackwater Bridge, wherever you go, it's dark water.
This is one of the things. Not to jump in here on this, but let's talk about the setup and the contours of the refuge. Okay, because this comes into big play in the wintertime, and especially if you're chasing big dragons. Okay, I always tell people in the wintertime what I've seen myself is more or less these fish kind of get together by size. So if you're in an area and you're catching fish that are 12 inches, you're probably going to catch a lot of 12-inch fish. If you're in an area you're catching 6-pound fish, you're probably going to catch more predominant fish in that 6-pound class than smaller fish. Right. Now, back to the contours. The reason I'm telling you this is for a reason. These bigger fish want deeper water, and trust me when I tell you this, the bigger fish control the area. They're not going to let the little fish come in or anything like that. So this is what we want to look for in the cold. We want to look for a deep area near like a cove that might have 2 points on it with a mud flat just off of that. You know what I'm saying? Or it might have a mud flat shoved up in the back of that cove.
Like some of the turns in the rivers.
Yeah. I look for I key in on mud flats because we're talking about water that's a foot and a half and less deep. So if we've had 3 60-degree days in February, and I've caught fish on top water 12 months out of the year here in Blackwater. If we've got water temperature in that cove, in that 1.5 foot zone or that mud flat, and it's say 36 degrees in the morning, and here comes a 60-degree day at us. Because of the decaying pine trees and the pine tar and the color of our water, that just soaks up the sunlight, especially in a shallow area, coupled with the muddy bottom. Right. Now, here's the best scenario for the wintertime for me. Tide comes out. Mud's exposed. Sun's up in the air. We're hitting 60 for the day. Tide's coming back in the afternoon. The first place I'm going is any cove I know of with a foot or less of water because I know that mud's already been heated up by the sun. Now, as the water rolls in, it's gathering that heat, plus it's soaking up more heat from the surface. And let me tell you what, folks. I can catch bass and snakeheads on a buzzbait December, January, and February after them 3 days. And if we get a cold snap and that cove gets cold, those fish are going to back right out to that area they've been staging all winter, waiting for their opportunity to move up on that flattened feed. That's where they will stay all year, 2 places, and they will transition back and forth from both of those areas. So I'm looking for deep water next to a point. Hopefully there's a mud flat and some kind of a cove. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because they're not traveling.
Yeah. No.
They're laying. They want both.
Yep.
They want the shallow to feed and the deep to lay in.
I mean, I hated to jump in there with that, but I just had a really good thought there, and I was feeling it in my head and thought, hey, let's flow with it.
So you prefer baits or you prefer minnows?
So for me, I mean, I'm always minnowing in the wintertime.
You're always minnows.
You know what I mean? Now,
you eat minnows year round.
Yeah, I mean, if I see the activity, then I'm always reaching in for a lure. But I mean, the wintertime, you're going to have tough days. So my biggest thing is, I want to make sure that I'm successful. So I'm always going to have a bucket full of snakehead destroyers from the bait boys right next to me, and I'm going to always have my little junk minnow chum bucket there too, because when they fire up in the wintertime, they start to eat, man. If you can capitalize on that bite for 2-3 hours, and cornflower and them guys out there will tell you, you walk out there with 100+ fish in your cooler. And I'm not talking about baby fish. I'm talking about nice fish. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, you were talking about the mud flats. A lot of times when I'm fishing or when I'm hunting, we go out in the boat, and the water's out in those mud flats, and you're going around a turn. You always see minnows there on the day when the sun shines.
Oh, yeah.
No matter how cold it is, as soon as the sun shines on that mud flat and heats it up, those minnows go right up on that edge.
Right.
So they're going to be right behind them when they're feeding.
Do you prefer swim baits at all, or you like topwater stuff?
I'm topwater.
Yeah.
Man. That's part of the reason why I don't fish so much in the winter.
Right.
But, you know, I like the nasty days for hunting, and not so much the nice warm days. So I'm probably this winter I'm going to.
When you get a couple warm days in a row,
my wife's going to be tickled right to death when
I'll
I find something new with the rest of my time.
The Kitech swim baits, I got turned on to them. I'm trying to think when we did the Philly show. But I met a group of guys up there in Pennsylvania. They call themselves the Snakehead Stalkers. And I had not even seen those swim baits yet. Really, I found out about those Kitechs talking to them guys, telling me about what they were using in New Jersey, to catch their fish. So thanks, guys, for that. Anyway. But yeah,
I still prefer chatterbaits.
I know you're a chatterbait.
Yeah, I like chatterbaits. I use them a lot in the spring, summer.
I mean, I will throw my swim bait on a 16th-ounce head and pour me I'll pour me a custom head on a thick hook and make it 16th ounce just so I can retrieve it that slow,
I like chatterbaits until the grass starts growing. You know where I fish.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Once the grass goes, you're done. It's the top water, and
absolutely.
If
That's the only thing you can use there when that grass is thick. So, next question we've had a lot this week, I don't really have much experience with. And, Gary, I'm not sure if you do or not, but I know Kaz has. Can you fish for snakehead after dark?
Oh, I love this question. So, yes.
Point blank, yes.
Yes, and now I have to give it up, right?
That's right.
So, okay, so, all right, so everybody asked me about, nighttime. Is it worth coming down here to target them at night? Absolutely. Look, if you want to shoot them, you can always catch them getting a gulp of air with a nice light on a bridge. That's easy. But as far as hook and line, bobber, so here you go, folks. I'll go ahead and give it up. So for me at night, I use one of these big round lighted bobbers with rattles inside of it. Runs on batteries. I like to use the green because the green seems to illuminate more of the area. What I do and what people have to understand is, this fish, in my personal opinion, operates more on sound here than anything. You know what I mean? I'm sure they operate on some scent too, but I seem to be able to, the louder the lure, the noisier the lure, the more interested they are, the more curious they are, etc. So what I learned in my 3rd year here, and I've been trying for 3 years to figure it out, and I got thinking one night about the guys shooting bows. I thought they used lights. And the guys I talked to, they said they used the lights to draw the fish up to the light, so they can get a shot. So I thought, how could I float a light, anything like that? And I was walking and I saw that big rattle bobber that lighted up bright green and bright red and got one of each and said, you know what, I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to take these out there and I'm going to see if maybe I can't draw them into this noise and this light. It was insane. First night I did it, dude. It was ridiculous.
Now, did you just use minnows? You didn't use any baits?
I used minnows. That's what I used. And I literally, no matter where I fished, if it was 6 feet of water, that's where the minnow was. I'm talking 6 inches from the bottom of that thing. And I really think...
Because the lights would attract.
Yeah, every time I'd hit that, you could hear that rattle, man. 40 yards out from me, you could hear that thing. You could hear it.
And farther in the water.
You had to keep that minnow close to it.
Yeah, because they like I said, they hear the noise. They come in to look. Now here's the light. All I could see is this little thing just shimmering in the light. Man, it was ridiculous. And then I told a couple guys, and they tore them up too. And we kind of stayed quiet about it, But hey, man, we need help. So
that's right.
Get yourself a green lighted bobber and some rattles and some big snakehead destroyers and go to work. I mean, it works definitely better in the warmer months. You're probably going to struggle a little more in the colder months. But don't put it out of the question if you're, getting ready to go home and it's gotten dark and you got that lighted bobber in there. Maybe let that thing sit in the water while you go load your truck up or your car up or something and get ready to go home,
Right. Scary, what are you thinking? You haven't tried them after dark yet?
I've fished a lot of different times with lights and fish will come to light.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about something earlier. Talk about what we were talking about with that floating light.
I used to, I don't even know where you get them. I've had one for years. It's just a little looks like a styrofoam cup holder, but it's bigger. And it's
housing in
basically an old DC headlight goes inside of it, and there's a wire. And the wire has jumper cables on it, and it's maybe 10, 15 feet long. And you just plug it into your battery in the boat, you set the thing in the water, and headlight down, and it floats so that the wires aren't exposed to the water, and it just bobs up and down. I used to fish a couple places. One was Howe's Point, and the other place was down Hills Point. And you just pull up in the cove and drop that thing over, and the water's fairly clear September and all, and it was ungodly what would come up to that thing. I mean, everything from skate to perch to rockfish, you name it, speckled trout would just come in around it. So I'm sure it's no different with the snakeheads. The water's a little more dirty, so you're probably not going to be able to see them as good, but they're still going to attract to that light. Even if the water's dirty, it's no different than a headlight in fog. You can see it, you just can't tell, but you know where the center of it is basically, and you're attracted to it. So they're gonna come to it.
And being that we were talking about it earlier, just with my own experience ice fishing up at Deep Creek Lake, we've done this before. Where I'll have my hole that I'm fishing, then I'll punch 2 or 3 around me and set those floating lights like you're talking about on the ice. And literally the water's so clear, like you're saying, I mean, within 20 minutes, you can look down that hole and you can see 20, 30 feet up there when you're ice fishing. And you will see the little, I call them shadows. Hey, there's a shadow down there coming up. Hey, look, here comes another shadow. So what I'm going to try this year is I'm going to take this, what we've been talking about tonight, and I'm going to go try it. And if you want to do it with me, let's do it together. Let's go try a couple nights. Let's go out Aries or somewhere down there. Let's put some floating lights out. Let's go to Key Wallace. Let's go somewhere and do something like that.
We can hunt till dark. It's 4:30, 5 o'clock. And
right.
Go from there on the way.
It gets dark early now, so we can try it and
still be back.
So let's try it. So we're going to make it a point. The next couple of weeks, let's go try that.
Yeah,
we'll put a video up with that.
Sounds like a plan.
So what are some other techniques we can let folks know about cold weather fishing? So I mean, some other anything off the top of your head where folks need to know about how to fish for these snakeheads as it gets colder, ways to keep them successul.
This is what you got to think about. We had some fellows that came down on Friday. Rob Ballantyne and his group came down, and Rob's a good friend of ours. He's done a lot of work down here, and he's getting pretty knowledgeable on what's going on here with these snakeheads. And he called me up Friday, and I said, "Man, we struggled today." I said, "Rob," I says, "I'll tell you what," I says, "I've been thinking in my head, where these fish are going to go this early and where I think the next move is." And I told him where I thought he should go. And they went there the next day and they just ripped them to pieces. And here was the adjustment that had to be made. It wasn't that I sent them to an area where necessarily the fish were feeding so much.
Right.
I sent them to an area where I knew the fish would be holding in a staging area waiting for an opportunity to move up on a flat. That's what I told them. I said, look, when you get there, start yourself at like 6 inches, 12 inches, like we normally would up on the flat. If you're not getting anything, start edging out to that deeper edge, See if you can find the target zone. They're there, man. They are there. They are laying. All you got to do is get one to eat. Get back to it again.
That's the thing.
If I can get one to eat, I can get them all to eat. You know what I mean? That's what happens in the wintertime. And
that's year round.
And I messaged him at like, I don't know, I think it was like 11. How you guys doing? Dude, we're smoking them. I got to go, So, and the key was this, he started with live bait, and they were using lures too, just not as effective. He started at like 6 inches, and they got down to about 18 to 2 feet to 2.5 feet, and that was the target zone. Once they figured out
2.5 feet, that deep, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Once they figured, and it was like 3 to 4 on the outside edge of that. I knew they'd be somewhere in there, just waiting for something to wash along the edge. I knew that's where they were going to be. So I just told them, play with the depth, keep doing what you're doing, and eventually they found the fish. So that's the key this time. If I'm going over Key Wallace, I know the water is only 1.5 feet deep. With a real high tide, I might have 2 feet. With a low tide, I might have 8 inches. Yeah. So, you have to adjust accordingly. These fish are going to be holding tight to the bottom until they get into that mode of, I'm hungry, there's food available, I'm going to move.
That's the main thing I've been telling people is just, you want to, if you know the fish are there, you've got to just keep playing with your depth until you figure out how deep they are. Because it's so hard to gauge the water temperature this time of year with the temperature fluctuating up and down. Like we just had a 30-degree day yesterday, and it's 50 degrees today. I mean, you never know what temperature the water's going to be. So you've got to constantly play with your depths to really figure out where the fish are.
The water in the Blackwater and these small rivers is not like the bay.
No, absolutely. It's a totally different.
Changes maybe 1 degree a day. This water can change 8-10 degrees a day.
It change more than that. I've seen it change as much as 18 degrees in a day.
Yeah, if you get a shallow area where it's less than a foot deep, I mean, it'll be 10 degrees or more.
We were talking about this earlier. The first time that DNR had reached out to me was when I was posting pictures, I want to say somewhere in 2013, of winter fish, coolers of fish in the middle of the winter. And I got a message from a guy from DNR, and he says, "Is that an old picture? Or that can't be a new picture. Is that from today?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I caught these today." And I told him where I caught them at. And he said, "Get out of here, man." I said, "Oh, you want to come tomorrow? I'll be happy to show you if you want to come." And they came the next day, and I showed them. And the water was literally 34 degrees and had ice out on the edges. And in the center where the water was coming through, it was like 39 degrees. So,
and tearing them up.
yeah, I mean,
Do you ever use
crazy.
spreaders? I would think in the winter time, especially when it's slower, if I were going to fish with that big bobber, I'd use some kind of spreader where I had 2 minutes.
I mean, I've never really tried anything. I mean, I've had times where I call, 2 minnows on the line. I might have one up top, one down. But the problem with doing that is you've got two baits in succession on a line, and they want to tangle one another. This guy wants to come up. This
That's
guy
why I
wants to
say
go
spreader.
down.
You have to have some kind of
I mean,
spreader to keep them
Spreader's the
apart.
only way to do
yeah,
it.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a good idea. Maybe
Something to
give that a
try.
whirl,
That's
yeah.
I'll when I'm doing something that I've never done before, I tweak it a little bit and try different stuff.
I know you. He's MacGyver, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm gonna make something work.
Builds us our slot measurer.
Man, that's a nice measure. Yep.
I'll tell
You
you
gave Jim that, didn't you?
Yeah,
and what the Chenadai
got some
chopper,
more.
we got
Yeah.
that too.
I got some more that I'm making. So
And you got something. We hear you might have something new
yeah,
coming out.
I got a new killing tool.
So we got a few extra minutes. What's your favorite way of dispatching of the snakeheads? I say favorite, but what's the most effective way?
I mean, for me, I like our chopper just because
The chopper as well.
I can get right through the spinal cord. I'm not mauling my fish to pieces. I mean, the removing the gill arches thing, that's a very time consuming.
tough.
It's a lot of work to do. So I'm looking for my simplest, quickest. I'm done. Go back to doing what I'm doing. So that chopper. is
Removing the
probably-
gill arches is tough because if you don't completely remove the arch, I don't want to say they grow back, but they almost grow back.
We have seen several where, and cutting the gills is not that's not removing the gill arches.
right.
You know what I mean?
You can't just cut them.
We've had several this year where we've caught and literally you open, after I've done what I got to do, I like to look the fish over, and I've noticed in the gills you can see where somebody took a pair of scissors or something and just cut right through the gills, and you can see where they're all
The healing.
back
Yep,
together.
They
and
definitely heal.
So
Well, I think the thing that people don't realize when you cut the gill arches, that they have those air bladders that they can live off of.
Yeah.
So
they can still breathe. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you just cut the gill arches, I mean, and it gives them time to
Right.
to heal while they're breathing out of that bladder.
If they've got 3 or 4 on one side still working and still pumping oxygen,
Exactly.
you know what I mean?
And it gives them time to heal
Yeah.
that, and it doesn't effectively get rid of them. So
Well, one thing I found out with the chopper, when I made the first one, my intention was to cut them with a hatchet. But what I found out with it, it's not really sharp enough. When you first get it, first couple times, it'll break the skin and actually cut it. But what it does do, it breaks the spinal cord.
And that's the most important thing.
And you're not exposing if the fish is laying on the ground, you're not exposing them to the dirt and stuff because it barely even breaks through the skin. But you can feel the bones broken.
oh yeah.
And if you get stopped and that fish still has to wiggle, because sometimes it'll wiggle after, doesn't matter. That bone's broke. That's your
That's
And one of the biggest things, like people have been asking me lately, about dispatch and the DNR and things like that. Look, man, if you have shown initiative to dispatch the fish and they check you and it's moving a little bit and
right.
they're not going to give you a fine. Okay, you don't have to cut the head all the way off.
If
you
you're
know
just
what I mean?
beating in the head and hoping it's dead and it might be knocked out,
That's not going to fly.
You're going to have a problem.
Right.
But if you're making a visual effort
Right.
to make sure that fish is
Right.
dead, I don't think they're going to give you a hard time about
Right,
it.
I agree.
So, anything else, guys?
Yeah, so let's talk about our tournament trail that we're
Okay.
in the works of getting.
So we don't really have any dates set yet, but we plan on announcing that kind of stuff at the festival. The festival is our main thing we're focused on right now, and that's going to be April 4th.
Yes,
I think April 4th? 4th or 5th?
4th.
The 4th? Okay, April 4th. It's a Saturday. April 4th, and it's going to be held at Sailwinds.
Yes.
So
This is big time. So any vendors out there that are looking for a booth, I mean, you want to get in touch with us real
definitely
soon
get in touch
because
with us.
we've already been contacted by over 30 different vendors wanting booths, and some of the big
fourth.
tackle companies also, they're going to be setting up booths. We're looking forward to seeing some of them guys
Absolutely,
come out
so.
here. We've represented these tackle companies here at Wolford Store, and they're willing to stand behind us and come out at this show and put some booths up, bring a truck. even maybe give us a couple special guest features. You know what I'm saying? So
That's the door prizes.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely gonna have a lot of fun things at the festival.
but the tournament trail, I mean, we're going to go all around
Yes,
the whole entire day. We're at the
we're
Potomac
not-
River. I mean, everywhere. And this is
We're
just-
not restricting
right.
our trail this year to just Dorchester County. We're going to be traveling with the tournaments this year.
And this will be a sanctioned trail. I mean, we will have corporate sponsors. We will have, I think I'm up to 15 of the big tackle sponsors.
be a lot of
big
fun.
tackle companies, some rod companies, reel companies. Might even have a couple local boat companies getting involved. So, you know, it's getting pretty exciting. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So
yeah.
all this that's happening for
Tournament
us.
trail's
You know?
becoming a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So,
What else you think of? I mean,
That
anything
was
else
an
you think
absolute
of?
blast last year.
oh man,
man, I
it
had
was
a
so
good
much
time.
fun. So,
I think the coolest part about the tournaments last year is the amount of people that just came here with a chair and sat there just to watch. I mean, there were some times that we had more of a crowd than we had actual tournament entrants.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that was really good to see. And Johnny Mounts, you know, it's good to see him. Bobby Herbert, the mayor of Church Creek, good to see him involved. And all these guys are standing with us on this on the festival that we're doing too. So.
so I think that kind of wraps it up for us, guys. You have anything else to add?
That's about it.
Let's go fishing.
Good. Let's go fishing.
One thing we're going to talk about is where you can fish on Blackwater and where you
Oh,
can't
that's right, we
fish
forgot
on
to
Yeah,
get
let's
into that.
touch on that. Yeah.
We
One,
did
that's
forget
a
to get
real
into
more
that.
thing
important
before we go, folks.
So one main thing when you're fishing inside of the Blackwater Refuge, you have to make sure you're not fishing from the shorelines. I cannot stress this enough. They are very strict on this. You must be either in a vessel or from the bridge, or you will get a ticket if you're fishing inside of the refuge.
So let's just talk about one place in particular, 335. Everybody asked me this question. Can I go fish on the boat launch? Can I walk out on the point where the stumps are? Can I go into the, you know, you cannot get on Blackwater's physical property, okay? So this thing you got to understand, we're out at 335. Where the white rocks are, you can get on them white rocks between the guardrail and the water, but you cannot get on the shoreline past those white rocks. Same thing on the other side of the bridge, but you can go all the way up there on that side just because you're not touching any of the actual land itself.
Right.
When you're in the refuge and you're in a boat, you may not
Do not get out
beach
of
your
your boat.
boat and go walk around a cove because you can't get your boat up into it. It's not going to fly and you're going to get in a lot of trouble and you're most likely ain't going to be able to come back, you know? So, yeah, I mean, you really need to make sure that you're looking at these maps, you're talking to people, and you know where you're going is okay. You know, it's not okay to just assume anything here.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And assuming something here is going to get you in a lot of
Well,
trouble.
on Key Wallace, you can fish the shoreline where the rocks are. But
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's considered man-made, and that's the main difference there. That entire causeway is man-made, so they consider that to be part of the bridge. That's the only exception when you're fishing from the shorelines inside Blackwater.
But
And you can fish overnight. I mean, that's not a problem. Guy asked me last week, can I fish overnight? Yeah, you can fish overnight. That's no problem. There's many nights I go sit on Key Wallace with a lantern and let my music crank up and got my chair and my cooler and a couple snacks.
But you can't park in the new parking spot on Key Wallace.
No,
and-
you cannot
No,
park
that's
in there
not
overnight.
overnight.
Yeah,
That
see, that's
parking
what
lot
I'm
closes
saying.
at dark.
Yeah, see that, and that's what we're trying to tell people is you just need to make sure that you know everything. You know,
Yes,
'cause
there's a lot of ins and
I'm
outs.
glad
to
you
the
said that
different
because
rules.
somebody might have assumed that they could go in that parking lot. You know.
Well, there's and there's a lot of federal law that doesn't apply, and it's totally different. It's state law.
Right. The federal law only applies inside of the refuge.
Right.
So you really have to know the ins and outs when you're fishing inside of the refuge or outside of the refuge. It's a major difference in how you're going to fish
And
these
somebody
areas.
asked me the other day, they were like, hey, man, I've been hearing rumors that they can charge you on the federal level. Let me tell you what, folks, if you're caught on Blackwater, if you're caught fishing the water of Blackwater and you transport that fish, I'm just telling you, I know somebody that got 2 weeks ago. They saw him catch him on the refuge property, waited for him to get off and onto county road. Then they pulled him over. They've charged him under the state level, and they've charged him under the federal level, under the Lacey Act. So if you want to play and roll that game,
Well,
you're taking
and
a
here's
big
the thing:
chance, buddy.
even if you beat it in court, federal court's in Baltimore.
That's right.
There's a federal court in Salisbury, but I don't think it applies for that. It's
don't
for
think
it's
so.
for bankruptcy and things like that. So you're going to make a trip to Baltimore minimum.
So the bottom line, guys, just make sure you know the rules before you go.
Yeah.
Know exactly where you're going to be fishing and know the rules for that area. Just don't assume because most likely you're going to be wrong.
Like I said
I
last
know
week,
you were talking about it. You had a buddy tell you a guy was fishing in his septic pond for the cow flushing
Yeah, that was-
crap. You know what I mean?
that's like I said last week. If you don't know, don't go.
That's
Right.
exactly
It's
right.
just that simple.
So, All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us this week. Remember, if you have any questions for us, hashtag Ask Blackwater's Edge, and we're going to get to as many questions as possible every week. Probably going to stick with around 5 questions each week, depending on the times and all that.
And we've still got some questions left over from last week, so roll them over. But send us your questions.
We're going to answer as many as we can every week, but just hashtag Ask Blackwater's Edge, and we'll get to them as much as possible.
And for right now, we're going to do what you all have asked, and that's we're going to stay focused on snakeheads, right, Eddie? For a little bit.
So we'll get into some sick deer too, because we got rifle season coming up soon with sick deer.
Yeah, I want to touch on some of that.
But yeah, snakeheads definitely be the hot topic for the foreseeable future. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching.
And hey, all you guys that watched the show on Maryland Public Television, thank you. Everybody who sent the kind words in, and you know, we just trying to do a good job, and our goal is to just raise awareness, raise education. Look, we all know the snakeheads aren't going anywhere. So, as an angler and as a steward to the water, be responsible.
Absolutely.
Just be responsible. If you see something that ain't right, say something. You know what I mean? If you think you need to pull some fish out of an area, pull some fish out of an area. Do what you think's right, okay?
There's no law, state or federal, for picking up trash that's not yours.
Exactly.
That's right. That's
Keep
right.
the area clean.
That's right.
And your own trash as far as that goes.
That's right.
All right, guys, thanks for watching.
Everybody have a good night.